There is a peculiar comfort we all seek in the idea that we are in control of our lives, our thoughts, our destinies, and even of others. We build our existence upon this fragile foundation. I must control myself. I must control my future. I must control my emotions. But have you ever asked, what is it that is controlling? And what is it being controlled? When you look closely, you may discover something extraordinary. The controller and the controlled are one and the same. The thinker is the thought. The observer is not separate from what he observes. And when that is seen clearly, the whole illusion of control begins to dissolve like mist under the morning sun. We are conditioned to believe that control equals order. From childhood we are told, discipline yourself, manage your life, suppress your desires, direct your mind. But what happens when you look deeper into this process? Who is the one that disciplines? Is it not the same mind that is disorderly? So, in trying to control itself, the mind only creates more conflict, a division within, a battlefield between what is and what should be. Perhaps you have noticed this struggle in yourself. You decide to be calm, yet anger arises. You promise to be kind, yet irritation returns. You vow to be free from fear, yet fear quietly slips back in through another door. And then you say, I must control myself even more. But this very effort to control is the root of disturbance. The controller, after all, is born of fear, the fear of losing, of failing, of being nothing. Have you ever watched a river flow, completely free, moving effortlessly around stones over sand, sometimes calm, sometimes turbulent? The river does not control its movement. Its beauty lies in its naturalness, in its unresisting flow. But we human beings, we have lost that quality of natural movement. We resist, we hold, we direct, we shape. We are always doing something to ourselves, as if life were a machine that must be constantly adjusted. You may say, if I don't control my life, everything will fall apart. But look around. Has control truly brought order to the world? Has it brought peace within you? We control our nations through power and fear, our relationships through possession and demand, our minds through suppression and will. Yet beneath all that control, there is chaos, hidden, simmering, waiting to erupt. So I ask you, is control truly order, or is it a mask that hides disorder? Order perhaps is something entirely different. It may arise not from control, but from understanding. Understanding what is, not fighting it, not shaping it according to your desire, but simply seeing it. Can you look at your anger, your fear, your ambition without the impulse to change them? Can you watch them as you would watch a bird flying without interference, without choice? If you can, then you will see that what we call disorder begins to unfold itself, revealing its cause, its movement, and its ending. Out of that seeing, a natural order is born, not imposed, not cultivated, but effortless, like the unfolding of a flower. We have been taught that freedom comes through control, but in truth, control breeds conformity, and conformity is the denial of freedom. Freedom is not something that comes after discipline. It is at the beginning. You must be free to see, free to inquire, free to be aware. Only then can the mind discover what truth is. Let us look together at this illusion more closely. The mind says, I will control my thoughts. But what are thoughts? Are they not reactions of memory, of past experience, of conditioning? And who is the I that wishes to control them? Is it not another bundle of thoughts, another part of the same movement? It's like a dog chasing its own tail. The more it moves, the more confused it becomes. When you see that the thinker and the thought are one, that the observer is the observed, then control loses its meaning. There is only observation, silent, choiceless, and therefore completely attentive. Control is resistance. Attention is understanding. When you pay complete attention, when there is no controller, when the mind sees the futility of its own resistance, a new quality of perception begins. It is not passive, It is not lazy. It is alive, sensitive, watchful, like the surface of a still lake that reflects the sky without distortion. But our minds are rarely still. They are constantly seeking to shape experience, to direct life towards some imagined goal. We want to be something, more intelligent, more spiritual, more peaceful. And behind all this striving hides the same ancient illusion that through control we will finally be free. Freedom, you see, cannot be achieved through control, for control is born of fear, and fear is the very essence of bondage. The mind that seeks to control itself is like a man trying to imprison the wind. He builds walls of discipline, belief, and effort, but the wind cannot be contained. It only grows more restless, more violent. Perhaps we can explore this together. What happens when we let go of control, not as an idea, but as a living reality? What happens when you stop trying to control your thoughts, your emotions, your life? There is a fear, isn't there? The fear that everything will fall apart, that chaos will reign. But let us look carefully. Is that chaos out there, or is it inside? The fear of chaos is the fear of meeting oneself as one truly is. Because without control, you must face your own loneliness, your own confusion, your own emptiness. And that is what most of us are running from. So we seek control as an escape, not from the world, but from our own inner poverty. We say, I will control my anger, because we are afraid to see what anger actually is. We say, I must control my mind, because we are afraid to see how fragmented, how contradictory it has become. But when you stop running, when you simply look, then what was hidden begins to reveal itself. And in that revelation, there is understanding. The act of seeing is transformative. When you see something truly, a sunset, a child's face, a lie within yourself, that seeing has its own intelligence. You don't need to control it. You only need to be present. Presence itself brings order, as fragrance belongs naturally to a flower. Control, on the other hand, belongs to time. It says, I will become better tomorrow. I will overcome this fear next week. I will find peace one day. But the very desire to become is disorder, because it divides the present into fragments, what I am and what I should be. And in that division there is conflict, and in conflict there can never be understanding. Have you ever watched yourself, truly watched, without motive? Not to improve, not to condemn, not to justify, but simply to see. Such watching is not control. It is awareness, and awareness has its own beauty, its own discipline, not imposed, but natural. Think of a dancer, fully absorbed in movement. There is great discipline there, but it is not the result of control. It is born of passion, of complete attention. In that attention, every movement is precise, effortless, graceful. Similarly, when the mind is fully attentive, its actions are orderly, intelligent, harmonious, not because it is being forced, but because it understands. The man who understands anger is free of anger, not because he suppresses it, but because he sees its whole structure. He sees how anger arises from hurt, from image, from expectation, and in that seeing, it ends naturally. But the man who tries to control anger is still caught in it. He may hide it, he may disguise it under gentle words or smiles, but inwardly the fire continues to burn. So you see, control is the continuation of conflict by subtler means. We may call it self-discipline, moral strength, or spiritual practice, but it is still the movement of struggle, the me trying to become something. And as long as there is that movement of becoming, there can be no peace. Real peace is not a result. It is not the outcome of effort. It is there when effort ends, when the mind is no longer chasing, no longer resisting, no longer seeking to dominate its own shadow. Perhaps we can approach this from another angle. Imagine you are holding water in your hand. The tighter you close your fist, the more it slips away. That is what control does to life. It tries to hold it, to fix it, to keep it safe, and in doing so, it loses it entirely. But if you open your hand, the water rests gently in your palm. There is no struggle, no fear of loss. You are not possessing, you are in communion. That is the relationship the mind must have with life, open, attentive, without grasping. We think that control gives us safety, but the truth is it breeds fear. You control because you are afraid to lose, afraid to change, afraid to be vulnerable. But life itself is change. It is movement, uncertainty, death and renewal. To resist that movement is to resist life itself. Can you live without control, not as a theory but actually? Can you live one day, 1 hour, without trying to shape experience, without directing it, without saying, this is good or this is bad, just to watch, to listen, to move with life as it unfolds? It is not easy, because our whole conditioning is to dominate, to interfere. But if you can do it even for a moment, a single moment of pure observation, you will see something extraordinary. In that moment, you are not separate from life. There is no controller and no controlled, only movement, vast and silent, beyond measure. You are not the experiencer of that movement, you are that movement. And in that realization, all fear ceases. We have tried for centuries to control the world, through religion, through politics, through morality. But look what we have created: confusion, division, endless sorrow. Perhaps it is time to try the opposite, to understand, to watch, to let things reveal their own truth. For understanding is not born of control, it is born of relationship. When you are in relationship with your thought, your fear, your desire, not judging, not dominating, then the thing reveals its nature. And when something is fully revealed, it ends by itself. That ending is not destruction, it is renewal. Just as a leaf falls naturally when its time is over, so too the illusions of the mind fall away when they are seen clearly. The end of control is the beginning of intelligence. And intelligence is not something that belongs to you or to me. It is not personal, not born of experience or study. It is the flame that lights itself when the smoke of effort has cleared. So, when the mind stops trying to control, when it ceases to compare, to become, to impose, a strange stillness comes. That stillness is not dead, it is immensely alive. In that stillness, the heart is open, and love flowers naturally. Not the love that controls, that demands, that fears, but love that simply is. And that love, that intelligence, is the true order. You do not create it, you cannot maintain it. It comes when the illusion of control has completely ended. When the illusion of control ends, a very different quality of life begins. You do not become careless or chaotic. On the contrary, there is a deeper order, an order born of understanding, not of will. It is like the quiet order of the stars in the night sky, vast, precise, yet completely effortless. But most of us do not trust this natural intelligence. We are conditioned to believe that without control, we will fall into disorder. So we live in constant tension between what we are and what we think we should be. This tension expresses itself in our relationships, our work, our spiritual pursuits. We are always adjusting, manipulating, controlling, trying to make life fit the shape of our desires. Look closely, and you may see how subtle this movement is. Even when you meditate, is there not a controller present? The one who says, I must be still, I must not be distracted, I must reach a state of peace. But that I is the very disturbance it seeks to overcome. You are trying to silence yourself with your own noise. Meditation, in its truest sense, is not control of the mind. It is the ending of the controller. When you see that every effort to control only strengthens the one who is trying to become, meditation happens naturally. Then there is silence, not a silence cultivated by discipline, but the silence that comes when effort has ended. It is the silence of a mind that is free, a mind that is not reaching for anything, not holding on to anything. In that silence, there is an extraordinary sense of clarity. You begin to see things as they are, not as you wish them to be. And when you see clearly, action becomes right, effortless, precise. It is like a craftsman whose hands move without hesitation because his whole being understands the wood he is shaping. Action without control. Have you ever known such a thing? To act without the weight of motive, without the pressure of fear or reward? That is true action, and it has a beauty beyond measure. It comes from perception, not from will. Let's explore this more deeply. In daily life, we act mostly from control. We control what we say, how we behave, how we appear. We are always editing ourselves, always measuring, always guarding against some imagined consequence. And this constant control breeds anxiety because it divides us from what we feel. You may say, but if I do not control myself, I will hurt others. Yes, but is control the same as understanding? When you control anger, it is still there waiting to erupt. But when you understand anger, when you look at it without judgment, without resistance, it loses its energy. It dissolves in the light of attention. So the question is not how to control anger, but whether you can look at it completely without the shadow of control. To see something completely, your mind must be free. Free from comparison, free from desire, free from the urge to fix or avoid. That freedom is not something you achieve. It is there the moment you stop running away. Now, look at how this applies to relationship. We control one another endlessly, with our words, our silences, our expectations. We say, I love you. But behind those words lies a subtle demand. Do not hurt me. Do not leave me. Make me feel secure. And so love becomes possession, attachment, control. But love cannot exist where there is control. It is like trying to trap the wind in a cage. You may hold something, but it will no longer be alive. Love lives only in freedom. To love is to allow the other to be what they are, not what you wish them to be. To love is to see without control, to care without demand. When you begin to see this, relationship takes on an entirely new dimension. It is no longer a struggle of wills, but a communion of understanding. There is no fear of loss, because love that is free cannot be lost. It does not belong to anyone. It moves like fragrance in the air. It touches, it transforms, and it moves on. But for most of us, this seems impossible, because our minds are rooted in fear. Fear says, if I don't control, I will be hurt, I will be rejected, I will be alone. So we build walls of control around ourselves, hoping to feel safe, but those walls become our prison. And inside that prison we call it love, we call it peace, but it is only isolation. Can you live without those walls? Can you be with another human being without trying to shape them, without trying to make them fulfill your needs? If you can, even for a moment, you will know what true relationship means. It is not a matter of control, but of complete vulnerability. And in that vulnerability, there is great strength, not the strength of resistance, but the strength of understanding. You see, the mind that controls is always afraid to lose, afraid to fail, afraid to dissolve. It clings to the known, to what is familiar, to what gives it identity. But life is movement. It never remains the same. And to live fully, you must move with it, not against it. The tree bends with the wind, and so it survives the storm. The rigid tree, the one that refuses to yield, is the one that breaks. So too with us. The more rigid our control, the more easily we shatter when life does not conform to our will. But when the mind is supple, open, observing, there is resilience, there is wisdom, there is grace. Control is the refusal to learn. It says, I already know what should be, I already know what's right. But a mind that learns never controls, because it is always discovering. Discovery demands freedom, and freedom and control cannot coexist. When there is freedom, life becomes a constant revelation. You see things newly, the same sky, the same faces, the same routine, but with a freshness untouched by memory. You act spontaneously, not from habit, but from intelligence. This intelligence is not personal. It is the movement of life itself, expressing through you. So what happens when control ends? You do not become passive. You become intensely alive, intensely aware. Every action springs from clarity, not from compulsion. Every word is true because it arises from silence, not from fear. And this silence, this extraordinary stillness, is not something to be achieved. It is there when the noise of control, of becoming, of fear, has ended. In that silence, the mind is in communion with the whole of existence. It no longer stands apart as the controller, the observer, the knower. It is life itself, vast, immeasurable, sacred. We will go one step deeper in the final part, to see how the end of control transforms not only the mind, but the very essence of being, what it means to die to control, and therefore to be reborn into true freedom. So now we come to the heart of the matter. What does it truly mean to live without control? Not as a theory, not as an idea to admire, but as an actual state of being. To wake up each morning with no map, no authority, no psychological defense, meeting life as it comes, moment to moment. To live without control is to live without fear. But fear, for most of us, has become the very fabric of our existence. We fear the loss of security, the loss of love, the loss of identity. We even fear the loss of control itself, as if without it, we would cease to exist. And perhaps that is precisely the point. To live without control is to die to the self that clings, that demands, that measures, that says, "This is mine, this is me." When that self dissolves, what remains? Do not answer with words. Do not reach for belief or for hope. Simply look, directly, silently. When the I that seeks control disappears, there is no void, no darkness, but a vast, immeasurable stillness, an awareness that is whole without center, without border. That stillness is not something created. It is not born from practice, nor sustained by will. It is what remains when control, with all its noise and tension, has ended. Most of us are frightened of such emptiness. We think, if I let go of control, I will be nothing. But have you ever asked what that nothing really is? Is it truly nothing, or is it everything? The seed must die for the tree to grow. The leaf must fall for the new one to emerge. In the same way, the self, the controller, must end for love, for intelligence, for beauty to be. This death is not tragic, it is sacred. It is the death of the known, of the mechanical repetition we call life. It is the ending of fear, because the one who was afraid is no more. When there is no controller, there is no resistance. When there is no resistance, there is no conflict. And when there is no conflict, there is peace. Not the peace of the grave, but the living peace of understanding. Such peace is not something to be sought. It comes when you stop seeking, when you stop trying to control the flow of life and allow it to move through you, as the wind moves through the trees. To live in this way is to live in truth, not the truth of words or scriptures, but the truth that reveals itself in silence, in the space between two thoughts, in the quiet moment when you are simply aware, neither choosing nor rejecting, but completely present. Then life becomes astonishingly simple. You eat, you walk, you speak, you listen, and each act has a purity, a wholeness, because there is no you trying to control it. There is only doing, only being. Look at the sunset without naming it. Just look without saying beautiful or ugly. In that instant, there is no controller. There is only light, color, and the vastness of perception. That is the essence of freedom, to see without the shadow of the self. We have built civilizations upon control, control of nature, of others, of our own minds, And look what we have done. We have conquered the world, but we have lost ourselves. We have filled our lives with noise, but our hearts remain empty. So perhaps the real revolution is not out there in systems or in institutions, but here, in the quiet ending of control within oneself. Because when you end control, you end fear. When you end fear, you end aggression. And when you end aggression, you begin to live with compassion. Compassion is not an idea, it is a state of being. It blooms naturally when the mind is quiet, when it no longer separates itself from life. In that compassion, you do not control another, you understand them. You do not direct, you move together. That is true relationship, and that is true peace. To live without control is to live in complete communion with what is. Whether it is joy or sorrow, success or failure, you meet it without resistance, without manipulation. You meet it as part of yourself, because you are not separate from life. This understanding brings an extraordinary sensitivity. You feel the movement of a leaf in the wind, the cry of a bird at dawn, the suffering of another human being, not as something apart, but as your own being vibrating with the world. And from that sensitivity comes responsibility. Not the moral responsibility imposed by society, but the responsibility that arises from love. You care because you are that which you observe. You care for the earth, for the trees, for each other, because there is no division between you and the world. That is the end of control and the beginning of intelligence. Intelligence is love in action. Order without rule, movement without motive. It is the light that guides itself. So now, as we come to the end of these words, perhaps you can simply be still, not to achieve stillness, but to see the stillness that is already here, beneath the noise, beneath the effort, beneath the endless need to control. If you can see it, not with the mind, but with the whole of your being, then in that seeing there is no controller, no controlled, no division, no time. There is only the vast movement of life itself, eternal, unknowable, and sacred. Let that silence speak to you. Let it move through you without grasping, without naming. For in that silence, the illusion of control ends completely, and what remains is truth.